Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Jen Fisher. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting's Unleash Your Story. I'm so grateful to have you here today speaking on your book, Work Better Together. And it's so interesting because you're Deloitte's first ever Chief WellBeing Officer. I love the name. How did that come about that you originated with that title? How did that come about?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. And I get that a lot. It is a great title. It's also a great role. I mean, it's a very rewarding role. And I get the question, how did that come about? And the truth is, it came about a lot out of personal necessity. I've been with Deloitte for 20 years or a little over 20 years. And about 7 years ago, 6.5, 7 years ago, I found myself in a place where I was completely burnt out, to the point where, I really could not get out of bed or engage in my life or work in any meaningful way. And so I was forced to take a step back. And this was at a time, I feel like now there's so much discussion around workplace burnout, especially before the pandemic, but especially because of the pandemic. We're all talking about it, but it's which is great in a sense. It's not so great because we're all feeling it. But 7 years ago, burnout wasn't talked about in the workplace, and so I really did not know what I was going through. I just really, honestly, I processed it as failure because I looked around and everybody else seemed to have it together. Everybody else seemed to be able to show up for all the roles that they played in their life, including work. And so I processed it as, wow, there's just something wrong with me, or maybe I'm not cut out to be here. But I was forced to take some time off to really, focus on my health, not just my physical health. I was struggling with my mental health, anxiety, depression at the time. And in doing that, I had to really reprioritize the role that work plays in my life. And I became very passionate about, and I'm going to steal a line from Arianna Huffington about wanting to help others, recognize and realize that burnout isn't the price that we pay for success. And it is absolutely something that we can and all should do. And more importantly, it's something that we can and all should expect from our employer and from our workplaces. And so when I came back to work after my leave of absence, I started to speak to a few people, a mentor of mine, and I was actually going to resign from Deloitte because I felt so passionate about wanting to help others in this area. And she was the one that pushed back on me. And she's like, you're not going to resign because if you need this, then there's a lot of other people here that probably need it too. So I put together a business case for what well-being at Deloitte should look like, based on a lot of research that I did. And I pitched the idea to many of our leaders, and I said, give me a chance to do it. And if it doesn't work, then I'll leave. And that was about, 6 years ago. And it's still going strong, and probably even more so. I think the pandemic has put workplace well-being on, front and center on the minds and the desks of every C-suite executive, but also the entire workforce, because we're all feeling the effects of work from home, or just working in situations that are not ideal for us, right?
Oh, absolutely. And now tell me your perspective, Jen, because I recall that I wasn't always stressed in the corporate environment. I've been in the corporate environment for over 30 years now. And early on, it wasn't a problem. Is it modern technology? Is it that workflow is just so much quicker? What's your perspective, and what has your research shown as far as why there's more burnout?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. Certainly, the technology has a role to play, and it's not the technology itself, because technology itself isn't good or bad. It's really kind of how we choose to use it, right? And so what has the emergence of technology into every aspect of our life, not just work, right? I mean, we are on our screens constantly, and we have evolved to, I mean, we live in this constantly connected, always on world and always on society. And when we're not, we experience FOMO. We think that we're missing out on something, the fear of missing out, right? And so, or if we fear that if we don't respond, in 10 seconds flat, that somehow we're going to be viewed as less committed or less loyal or less interested or less engaged, right? And so, I think technology has certainly contributed to that, because we don't know how to turn it off, and we're not very good at it, whether that's in our work lives or our personal lives. We're just always on. But I also think that one of the things that in our research that, we call it work better together, and how relationships significantly impact our well-being negatively and positively in the workplace. And having, and so technology has actually significantly impacted the way that we work together and our ability to really develop meaningful relationships in the workplace, because so much of it has become, digital, right? And so we even when we were working in an office, I mean, I'm guilty of it. If there was somebody down the hall and I didn't want to get up and go talk to them, I would just ping them and say, like, hey, can you send me this, right? And when we didn't have those types of technologies, we would get up and actually walk down the hall and have a nice conversation. I also think that this is further exacerbated. I mean, it was really interesting to be writing this book about relationships in the workplace during a time when all we had to keep us connected was our technology, right? And so there's the yin and the yang, like everything in life, right? There is the positive side of technology because it does allow us to stay connected. It's really just, the technology is still using us. We're not using the technology. And we need to learn to use technology to bring forward our humanity and augment our humanity versus the other way around.
Ooh, good one. That is really awesome. Yeah, it's so true. I remember when we first were on lockdown in New York, it bothered me because even if I'm not like going to their desk, I like being around other people. Yeah. And now, even though New York is kind of getting back to the groove, they're still separating people. So you feel like you can't be as together as you used to be. But to your point as well, when we were doing the digital thing, it was our only kind of lifeline. Yeah. And had we not had Zoom and other technologies, we would have really been in a hole had we had that work from home. We couldn't. Yeah. So that was a plus. What I found also that was really hard for people, like my friend was single and on lockdown. And then what does that mean for her connecting to other individuals? That takes a toll, I'm sure, stress-wise and on your well-being. Yeah. And are you able to give when you feel so depleted, not connected?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one of the biggest solutions that we've found for burnout in the workplace is we're not suggesting that, everybody in the workplace has to be your best friend, right? I mean, that's not possible. But we did find in our research, and there's lots of other external research to back that up, is that when you feel connected to others in the workplace, when you feel a sense of belonging, that gives you meaning and purpose. That gives you somebody that you can, call up, send a message to when you're having a great day, but also when you're having a bad day, right? And when you don't have that in the workplace or any relationship in your life, I mean, there's a lot of distance that's created, and you don't feel that sense of connection, that sense of belonging to the organization or to the work that you're doing. And that can lead to burnout, or, can be part of what leads to burnout. And so having those outlets, those relationships that lift you up, that give you that ability to call someone up, to vent, to feel like you're seen and heard, that is a good, that is a solution, one of the solutions for burnout. And I mean, it's true in my life. I mean, people ask me all the time, well, if you were burned out, like what made you stay at Deloitte for so long? I've been here for 20 years. And I'll tell you, what's made me stay at Deloitte is, Deloitte's a great organization, but it's the people and it's the relationships that I've developed. And it's the times, the peaks and the valleys where I've had people there by my side to lift me up, to hold my hand, to, have my back. And that's what's kept me around for so long.
And I think the end of the day, Jen, no matter where you are, work or personal, it really starts with relationships. It's not the job. Because so many people, and it's funny, someone had said, people don't change jobs, they change situations and bosses. Exactly. Yeah, because they're getting away from maybe bad people or a boss. But is that really going to change anything at the end of the day? Because you'll go to a new place with new problems, because every job will not be perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now,
Absolutely.
what is your take to, say, a business owner listening in and she's not getting the response from her employees or his employees, and saying, how do they better connect with each other and build that foundation of well-being in their organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as a leader of people, as a team leader, or even just as a colleague, I mean, there's so many simple things that you can do, and we talk about this in the book. But one of my favorite things that I do, I mean, first of all, it's making time. I think especially what is missing in a virtual or hybrid world are what I call those serendipitous interactions. So those interactions that, like you were talking about, that you would have just walking down the hallway, running into somebody, or the conversations that you would have about what you did over the weekend, or how your family is doing before a meeting starts, or after a meeting ends. Those are missing in the virtual world, or they're a lot harder to do. They're a lot more challenging to do. And so, this isn't rocket science. This isn't blowing anybody's mind now, but I mean, one of the things I do with my team is when we have a team meeting, in the chat, I ask them to put in, 3 things that, 2 or 3 emotions or things that they're feeling today. Or, ask them, is there anything that is, keeping you from being fully present in this meeting today? And what that does is, number one, as a leader, it shows that you are okay with emotions in the workplace, and you are recognizing that, we're not always going to all show up at our best every single day. We're humans, and we have bad days, and I have bad days too. But what it also does is, say, for example, you put into the chat that you're feeling, depressed and hopeless. I don't have to address it in that moment, but I can come back to you later and say, hey, what's going on? How can I support you? What do you need? So it's a really quick way to get a pulse of how your team is doing. Now, that might feel really uncomfortable for some people if you're not, if you don't tend to kind of show emotion in the workplace. And we talk about this a lot in the book, where we talk about emotions. It's kind of like we were all taught, like, oh, check your emotions at the door. Well, that's not possible. We're human beings. We have emotions, right? And as a leader, understanding your team's emotions, like what makes them angry, what makes them happy, what makes them excited, that is incredible data. Because that teaches you, like, okay, how do I motivate this person? How do I get them to do their best? How do I get them to be engaged? Another thing that you can do that, a lot of people at Deloitte will tell you is, ask a more probing question other than how are you? We all just reflect, fine, good, and then we move on. I ask people how they're sleeping.
Good one. I do
and so
really bad
like,
most of the time.
Yeah, people are like, wait, what? Why do you want to know how I'm sleeping? Well, the truth is I know, if I know how you're sleeping, then I usually know how you're doing. But how are you really? What's bothering you? Is there something I can do to support you? I mean, asking kind of more specific questions to people other than how are you, and kind of probing a little bit. You don't have to be aggressive or or like too intrusive about it, but just kind of asking a different question, because it does get people's attention. And it allows them, it kind of gives them that permission to say something different, or something other than fine or good.
Okay. Yeah. This brings to point, Jen. One thing I got working at home with a lot of my associates is one gal I was talking to weekly started to reveal to me bit by bit that she was super stressed, and so was I, because as you were mentioning, the technologies are great, but at home, a lot of my friends were saying that I'm not turning it off when 5 o'clock hits. When we were in the office, you start seeing people leave. You're like, I got to get the bus.
So then you start permission to say, okay, the work day, and for the most part, is ending.
Exactly. So you would have those cues, whether it be for lunch. Now, myself included, I wouldn't leave my desk. I would be there till 8 or 10 o'clock at night. And my friend was like, I feel like they don't understand. They send me reports at midnight and say, can you get this to me by, in the morning? I'm like, the morning.
It is the
Where am I
morning.
going to sleep? So, but I'd like that we maybe address what can employees do to really open that dialogue as well. It's not all on your bosses or the business owners. What can you do to have that honest conversation if you're feeling overwhelmed, so you don't get that burnout, that you let them know? Because then, like my friend was saying, they don't what's the word? They don't care about me as a person, and that's not true. Perhaps it's you're not letting them know where you're at and what you're going through.
That's absolutely right. And I talk about what we're talking about is boundaries, and I talk about boundaries a lot. And I think what you're getting at is, what I challenge people with when they come to me to talk about boundaries is, look, we're really good at locking up our homes, locking up our car. We lock up our stuff. But when it comes to our own personal well-being, we are terrible at telling people, hey, no, that doesn't work for me. And the other thing about boundaries that I think, boundaries get a bad rap because a lot of people think that boundaries is just about saying no. And it's not about saying no. It's actually about saying, hey, this doesn't work for me. Can we find a different solution? Can I help you find a different solution? Can I connect you with someone that might be able to help you? Right. And so sometimes it's about saying no. But I also think when you say no, when you set a boundary, that's about saying yes to something that's more important to you, right? And so it's hard. It's certainly hard in the workplace. It's hard if you are a more junior employee and you don't feel like you have that permission, right? But I do think that you can have an open and honest conversation, and you should have an open and honest conversation. There's a great practice that I read about recently that's called an entry interview. And as a leader, when you bring somebody onto your team, asking them questions about like, hey, what is important to you? What are your personal needs outside of work? Do you have any boundaries, or are there things that you need to do? Are there times during the day that, you need to be away from your computer, et cetera? I mean, I think the thing about sending reports at midnight, honestly, like, first of all, I would talk to that leader and just be like, number one, why aren't you sleeping?
Yeah, seriously.
Because, if you're asking somebody to read a really important report, especially if it's like a financial report, I mean, the opportunity the negative opportunity that you're creating for a mistake to happen by having somebody review something in the middle of the night is huge. I mean, we don't want pilots that haven't slept. We don't want surgeons that haven't slept. I work in accounting and business consulting. I mean, you don't want somebody doing your audit that hasn't slept. Right. And so, I mean, I think that, being reasonable about the time that you shut down, I mean, we all need to get a little bit better than that, better at that. And so, if you have a boss that is regularly sending you things in the middle of the night, having a conversation to say, hey, look, I know that you like to work late and that's your style. It's not my style. So I just want you to know, when you send me those things really late at night, I will get back to you I'll get back to you the next morning, and just state that very matter of factly, like, hey, I recognize that might be your work style, but it's not mine. And so, and then, I mean, that's setting a boundary, right? If they have a problem with it, they'll let you know. And then, at least you kind of know, and you can take action from there, whether or not this is the right place for you to be or the right person for you to be working for. But I also just, I mean, the thing about leaders, right? Leaders are human too. Leaders have a lot going on. Everybody's busy. And sometimes leaders, including myself, we don't always, recognize or understand the downstream impact of our actions. And so I think coming to your leader with some solutions, as opposed to just saying, hey, I have a problem, right? Like, talk to a couple other people on your team. What are some ideas? What are some things that you want to try, and take ownership of it, and go to your leader and say, hey, this is really important to me, or really important to us. How do you feel about us trying a few things? We talk about team behaviors and norms. And one of the things that has been really helpful as a team, setting our standard working hours. When can we generally all expect to be online and generally expect to hear from each other in a reasonable amount of time? And outside of those hours, if there is an emergency, and I mean an emergency, how are we going to get in touch with each other? And it's not by email, because then everybody feels like they have to constantly be checking email. So is it text message? Is it some sort of, other platform where you can communicate? Is it picking up the phone and calling, and I mean real emergency, because there's, depending on the job that you do, a lot of the things that we think are emergencies aren't really emergencies.
Yeah. Well, I like what you say, Jen, because this, one of my old bosses used to say that. He's like, if you have a problem, please come with A, B, C, D resolutions. And what was great about it is it empowered each person on the team to feel like, okay, I got this, and he trusts me to come in with solutions. And then we talk over what's the best one, and he lets me run with it. So those are great. We could talk all day. I want to keep going, but we do have to end. But I don't want us to leave without everyone finding out how they can get an awesome copy of your book, Work Better Together. How can they do that?
Yeah, they can get it at their favorite book retailer. Absolutely. Obviously, Amazon has it, but any book retailer should have it or be able to order it for you. And if anybody wants to connect with me or follow me, I'm on LinkedIn, Jen Fisher. I'm at JenFish23 on both Twitter and Instagram as well.
Awesome. Well, Jen Fisher, I really thank you for coming to talk on this very important topic. A lot of people I'm working with are overly stressed, and they don't have to be. I think every company should have a Chief WellBeing Officer.
I do too.
Well, you have a wonderful night, and thanks for coming to Savvy Broadcasting this evening.
Thank you for having me. It was a great conversation.
You betcha.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.